UFC 300 post-fight show brought to you by Fight Bananas. I'm Jonathan. We got Blake. We got Johan. We just witnessed one of the best cards, top to bottom. You saw it all. You saw amazing fights like Rakic versus Yuri. You saw Max Holloway saying, "Let's throw down," and sleeping Justin Gaethje with just a second to go. You saw two great title fights with Alex Pereira and Zhang Weili retaining their belts, and also the emergence of Kayla Harrison potentially at the top of the division. We also have a new number one contender in the lightweight division in Arman Sarukian. We have so much to talk about, guys. We'll get right into it. So before we break down the card and we start getting a little bit too deep into it, let's get into our top three favorite fights of the night, guys. So Blake, obviously the main man. How you doing, my brother? First of all, how was your fight night? And give me just real quick your top three fights of the night for you.
So obviously my fight night has been amazing. Couldn't have asked for a better card for UFC 300. Started out like it wasn't going to be that great when you look at how the fights were lining up. You're like, I don't really like the card. And then as names started accumulating, you got something that was spectacular. Obviously had an amazing time. Fight Bananas did a 7, 8, 9 hour live stream for the thing. You got to hop on it. I got to hop on it. We were having a blast that whole time. So the whole fight night experience, then getting to shut that off and actually hone in and watching the fights, they were amazing. If I had to go for my top three fights though for the night, 100%. I mean, obviously, how are you going to not put on Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway? Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway was everything that a fight fan could have wanted in a fight for the two names that were in it. Absolutely amazing. I loved the Weili Zhang Zhang Yanan fight. Dude, talk about two women, especially two Chinese women putting it on the map for China tonight. It was amazing. It gave me flashbacks to Young Jacek and Wei Li, that type of like echelon of great fights that we're always talking about for like the greatest women fights of all time. And then for third place, honestly, there's a lot of people that could have came in here at third place. Like I don't even know if I could have a third because there were so many good ones. I mean, obviously Armand Saruki and Charles Oliveira comes to mind. They were fantastic. All three of these fights were all on the main card, but I was blown away by the entire card. So it was phenomenal.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about resilience by Yan Xiaonan. Obviously, Zhang Weili getting the dub, but after almost getting finished in two straight rounds, she was able to maintain composure and still get it off. Johan, before we get to your top, so I want to shout out to Altaf. Great card top to bottom. We also got Christopher Rothstein. Great night of fights, great chatting. I know a lot of, yeah, you appreciate you coming on, burning on some with us as well. And then Caleb, it was actually not smelling salts. DC misinterpreted what it was. He did something with like the pressure points in their nose. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then Christopher saying Jiri and Rakic was his fight of the night, which I know Johan, when we talked on the phone earlier today, that's what you actually gave me as your pick. So give me your top three picks before we get too deep into this card.
Well, listen, in the spirit of UFC 300, I am not Johan tonight. I am Leonidas. This is Sparta. I'm just telling you right now, as a wrestling fan, UFC 300 was too sweet. Give me a too sweet right there. First off, number one obviously was Jiri versus Rakic because it lived up to the hype. This was the fight I was most anticipating, and it was on the prelim, and we got this for free. I didn't have to pay $80 for it. I got that for free. So that was number one. It lived up to the hype. I loved that fight. Obviously, the BMF title fight was another one. And honestly, Diego Lopez's performance, that was something that I was thoroughly impressed with. I mean, obviously, this card had, the established former world champions names. You had a lot of established names, but you also had a lot of up and comers. So, like, overall, this card was just, again, too sweet.
Absolutely, like you said. I mean, it's hard because you just so many performances. You start to some of them slip to the back of your head. I've totally forgot about Diego Lopez. Insane power from short distance with those beautiful uppercuts. But guys, before we get too deep into that, so let's start off with the main event. Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. First off, shout out Jamal Hill with an amazing walkout song.
Yep.
Definitely was a nice little
That
throwback.
was the best part of the fight.
Somebody tell
His best performance of the
me.
night. That was the best part of his showing for tonight. Caleb saying Bobby Green was great as well. Absolutely, we'll get into that. And then Potan, man, that walkout is so intimidating. I would not know what to do if Potan showed up at my house. Um, but getting into the fight a little bit, you expected this as coming in, right? You had a guy that's a world class glory kickboxing champion across two divisions. And with all due respect to Jamal Hill, he got to the top mostly on raw athleticism. He has some of the technique that's there. He's 6'4", so he's also a lengthy guy in that division, and don't want to take away too much from him. He's also coming back off of an Achilles injury too, right? But he didn't have any outstanding qualities per se for him to showcase into this fight. He wasn't like, okay, he was going to rely on his excellent speed. It was always the athleticism of Jamal Hill is usually the neutralizing factor. But when you have a guy that's so sharp and polished like Alex Pereira, it's hard to do that against him. So Alex went in there. And I think the funniest moment of the fight that actually led up to the finish was Jamal Hill hit him with a little bit of a nut shot almost, grazed the cup. Referee went to go and actually pause the fight, pushes him back, and less than 2 or 3 seconds later, hits him with a left up hook to put him down, gets him down, finishes him with some ground and pound. And that was it. And the end was the birth of a new meme with the Alex Pereira. Man, I didn't know this guy could be this funny after a fight where he's so intimidating, but he called it essentially. He said this was going to be an easy fight for him, and that's what it was. Johan, I'll go to you this time, my man. Reaction to this fight, and just what do you think of Alex Pereira's performance tonight?
Listen, I tell you this. I can't believe someone can be so funny while having the same facial expression the entire time. I'm telling you that right now. Like, I have never seen someone express so much with so little expression. But let's get to the performance. Obviously, we expected this. I mean, Alex Pereira has hands of stone. He doesn't even have to clip you cleanly. Nuclear power in his hands, exactly. He has nuclear power in his hands. Doesn't even have to clip you cleanly to do damage and to rock you. And what you saw here was again, he was already a star, but you saw a mega star, a household naming performance. I mean, showing out in the first round in the biggest UFC card up to this point in the history of the company. I don't know what to say. I'm actually speechless because the whole sequence to how it happened is kind of like it's almost like a movie. He gets hit low. He like literally stops Herb Dean, like literally stops him. Herb Dean looks speechless, and then seconds later clips him. Like, that is literally something out of a movie. That's something a fucking badass person from Conor McGregor and Roadhouse couldn't even do that. I'm telling you that right now. Like, that's how fucking crazy. That's how it felt scripted at that point. But like, honestly, I'm so speechless because wow, like I knew he had power. I just didn't think he was going to clip him. I don't know. I'm again, it's just speechless. The performance was breathtaking.
And on commentary, it seemed to be a point where Alex Pereira, like he said he stopped respecting the power of Jamal Hill and just started walking him down. And essentially, that was kind of what happened in this fight, right? You saw the moment where he was like, okay, that's all kind of he's throwing at me. And I think Jamal Hill did a good job of mixing it up with some of those inside and outside low kicks, right? He wasn't checking all of them. Some of them he was, of course, being Alex Pereira. But being a southpaw, I thought that was going to give him a little bit of a different challenge, maybe force him to adjust a little bit, not a little bit at all. So light heavyweight Alex Pereira, like Keelan is saying, he's a juggernaut essentially at this point. So Blake, thoughts on the performance, and then do you think Yuri's next? Do you think maybe Magomed Ankalaev, who just beat Johnny Walker, is next? Like, who do you think should be next for Alex Pereira in the light heavyweight division?
So here's my deal with the title fight. I actually thought that it was. This is going to sound terrible, but I thought it was the worst fight of the night. I am very impressed with Alex Pereira. All right, I'm not taking anything away with what he did. I love Jamal Hill as well. I have a qualm with how the knockout happened, and I might be in the minority, but I feel like I can't be the only person who felt like it was a little bit gypped because of the way that the referee interference and non-interference took place. I didn't like the fact we all heard Jamal Hill kick Alex Pereira in the cup. We heard it. All right. Herb Dean steps in and Pereira shoves him away, which I also thought was hilarious. He just says, "Get the fuck out of here. I'm trying to fight this guy." I get it. I do. But as a referee, your job is to control the aspects of the fight that you feel are penalties. And in that moment, I thought that Herb Dean should have made a qualified stop to the fight if he was going to intervene. If he didn't want to intervene, don't try to. But I felt weird when he tried to step in and let Alex push him off. And again, I might be in the minority, but I thought that threw off Jamal Hill's timing and rhythm substantially because obviously he got knocked out in 3 seconds, like 3 seconds right after that. And yes, Jamal did come back and he was ready to go. I just felt the timing of everything, and even my girlfriend who doesn't know as much about the fight game as I do thought it was very weird. The whole thing just seemed the timing of it, how quick the knockout was right after it, it didn't leave me with the performance that I wanted out of either of these two guys. Now, that being said, Alex Pereira is a fucking madman, dude. Like this guy's his death stare. I don't know if you guys saw in the walkout or even when he was being introduced by Bruce Buffer. His stare down of Jamal Hill reminded me of Vanderlei Silva's stare down against Fedor. Was it Fedor Emelianenko? I don't remember which one it was, but it reminded me of Vanderlei Silva's stare down. Oh, against Mirko Cro Cop or whatever. I don't know. Whatever. It was so piercing. It was nasty. I mean, let's keep in mind, Alex Pereira his face looks like he was the statue at Easter Island. Like it's that chiseled, just bam. And so he put on the show that he should. He broke Francis Ngannou's record on the punch machine power by a substantial amount, and I felt like it didn't get enough play by how much he casually broke that record. So we know that this man has power. He's had 8 fights in the UFC, and he's 7-1. The man is an absolute legend already, and he's only had 8 fights. But I just felt very uncomfortable with how the knockout happened with the referee interference. And that's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Keelan there. You protect yourself at all times.
I agree. Right? No, and I agree.
I understand there's a little bit of a pause and accident, but like you said, they had a bounce or two before it got back. It wasn't like he pushed him back and then threw the right hand as he was pushing him back. I would understand with that point, like, hey, but there's a little bit, but there's a lot of times where fighters are like, no, I don't need it. Even Justin Gaethje earlier was just like, hey, eye poke's good, or some other fights. So you see that
Demetrius Johnson has done that too.
Exactly. So I think really at the end of the day, protect yourself at all times. Like Justin Gaethje at the end of round 1 should have protected himself. He got his nose crushed. But
100%, and I'm not disagreeing. Like I said, I'm not taking anything away from Pereira. I'm almost more mad at Herb for a hesitancy to interject and reacting the way he did, because I think it took away from what could have been an even better fight. It was a spectacular knockout by Pereira. And like I said, Jamal Hill did come back. He seemed to be ready to go in fight form. So it was just weird. It left a sour taste by Herb's reaction into intervening into the fight more than either of the fighters did. I just felt weird about it. It just felt off. But like you said, protect yourself at all fucking times. I'm 100% a proponent of that. And guess what? Jamal didn't, and he got slept.
Exactly. So no, let's get Johan, before we finish this off, because I do want to obviously we have a ton to cover on this card. So Johan, real quick, as the next contender potentially for Alex Pereira, do you think it is Jiri Prochazka after a performance like tonight, or do you think Magomed, since he's not the one that's faced Alex before, would get first crack?
It's kind of tough because, I mean, after Yuri's performance, you would have to say he's the number one contender. But we've already seen, not that long ago, that Alex stopped Yuri. So, I mean, you would have to give Magomed Ankalaev the nod just off the freshness of the matchup. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of weird. Maybe you put Magomed and Yuri in a title eliminator fight, see who can fight Alex. But it's kind of weird because, I mean, you can't deny Yuri with the performance that he had against Rakic. He was. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it, but I mean, he was down on that card in
Yep.
the first round. He was getting lit up for a little bit, and then he started getting his range. It's kind of tricky. I mean, I think if we're going off freshness, I would say Magomed would get the nod, but honestly, the best bet would just be to have a title eliminator between those two, just so that way
Yeah.
you have the most credible contender
Yep.
at light heavyweight. And
No.
hey, maybe even Nikita Krylov, big wild card. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He can sneak his way in there as well, but
Yeah.
that's just a wild card.
I believe he's coming in off a win off of Ryan Spann. But let's get into this co-main event: Zhang Wei Li versus Yan Xiaonan. And in this fight, Yan Xiaonan had to go through absolute hell and back just to even make it to the scorecards. At the end of the first round, Zhang Wei Li had a choke that was so deep, and they say usually it takes 8 to 9 seconds for someone to pass out from a choke. She was in that way earlier than that 10-second slapstick. It was about 13, 14 seconds that she was in that choke. When Zhang Wei Li let go, she was out. I think she was out. I do think when Zhang pushed her off of her, that she kind of actually woke her back up. And then in round two, you saw something similar. Zhang Wei Li take the back, get some really good ground and pound. Jason Herzog is this close from stopping the fight. But Yan Xiaonan able to withstand. In the third round, you actually see her starting to turn the tables a little bit. And in the fourth round, she dropped her, dropped her twice within this and throughout this fight as well. So it's like you saw Zhang Xiaonan able to withstand, but Zhang Weili getting that second win with the cardio that you've seen her done over and over again, being able to get that takedown and utilize that ground game, getting into the back, crucifix, different positions, maybe not as much damage as you wanted to see, but still excellent for her as a champion, being able to mix it up, right? You want to know what your opponent's strengths and weaknesses are, and good champions know how to mix it up and diversify their skills. So now she's second in most defenses behind Joanna Jędrzejczyk in the division in the history. So that's beautiful to see. Blake, thoughts on the fight?
Thoughts on the fight? This absolutely gained my attention for possible fight of the night. I think it really only comes down between this and one other fight, but Yan Xiaonan and Weili Zhang went out there and did exactly what everybody expected them to do: put on a spectacle of a fight. And I'll tell you this: I was watching the fight. I went back and I had rewatched the Weili Zhang versus Jędrzejczyk fight, which I think we can all agree was the greatest women's fight in women's MMA history. Okay. I put this fight up there with one of those because of the heart of each fighter. One thing I also thought was funny was that Weili Zhang is the first Chinese champion in the entire history of the UFC. Had she been beaten, the girl who would have beaten her would have become the second Chinese champion. I think that was really cool to have at stake for this fight. That being said, I thought the fight was fantastic. Like you said, John, Yan Xiaonan was asleep after that first round. She somehow Korean zombied her way up into getting into her corner. I'm not sure. This could be something of a challenge for the referee. I know that the bell can't save you, but when you are clearly asleep, and then they even talked about it on the broadcast. Joe talked about it because they were like, "Do you want me to wake her up?" And they were like, "Yeah, wake her up." I was like, "Can you do that? Like, that seems a little suspect." The fact that she was able to regain composition and was able to go out there and put on the performance that she did, Yan Xiaonan, she was able to come back in such a surreal form just to be able to make it to the decision at the end of the fight to where she was either going to have her hand raised or not. That in itself, once it's got my entire body asking for a rematch. I want a freaking rematch of these two, dude. I thought those two ladies put on such a spectacle that it has to have a rematch. And again, could be in the minority. I don't know what you guys think, but I thought these two were the best of the best of the best in the women's strawweight division, and they showed it. I actually had it 2 for Wei 2 for Yan, and then obviously the fifth round was Wei Li, and she really did a good job of dominating on the ground game at the end, and that's how she was able to solidify her position. But I had it 2-2, and then 1 at the end for Wei Li. What did you guys have it?
I had a 3-1. I
You had
know
it
she got
3-1.
dropped at the end of the beginning of the
Well, it
fourth
can't be
round.
3-1, John, because it went to decision. So what was it actually?
Well, 3-1 going into the fourth because that, or going into
Oh,
the
okay,
fifth because
okay,
that's
okay.
the
I'm
question
sorry.
you asked, Mr. Big
My
Brain.
bad. My bad.
But Johan, so do you think Tatiana Suarez is next for Wei Li Zhang? Do you think that's kind of where all roads lead to at this point?
You kind of took the words out my mouth, my man. I was gonna say that. I was gonna say that is the one that is the one that is next. Obviously, I've been a big fan of Tatiana Suarez. I mean, she has been someone I've been hyping up for several years now. I would say that her wrestling is on another level. And that's one thing I want to see. I want to see Zhang Wei Li fight someone who's as good as a grappler as her, because Wei Li Zhang is super strong, physically strong, and you saw it tonight where you saw that like when she tried to finish the fight in the first 2 rounds, she almost felt her arms and legs kind of almost fatigued, but towards the end of the third and fourth round, that conditioning picked back up, and she kind of went back to her square roots, which was using her physical strengths, closing the distance, and kind of just using her grappling to get the advantage. So it'd be interesting to see a matchup between her and Tatiana Suarez, because Suarez puts a lot of pressure on you throughout, and she's going to back you up on the cage. So it's going to be interesting to see how Whaley can deal with all that weight and all that pressure, coming at her for 25 minutes. Overall, though, I think this was I wouldn't say it was one of Zhang Weili's best performances. I would say it's one of her most gutsiest performances. I think that because she blew her load so early, it was kind of a little rough, a little sloppy in the beginning. But she persevered, and she also just, man, she was just real gutsy, and she just persevered through it, and it was a good defense though.
So is nobody in favor of a rematch? Am I the
No.
odd man out there?
I mean, you don't get a rematch as a challenger if you don't win the belt, with all due respect. But I do want to move on to the next fight because we have a lot to talk about, which is one of the best fights of the night. We had Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, and Max Holloway this time with the performance was moving up to 155 for the second time. The first time against Dustin, he was getting slapped around. He was getting bullied. He was getting little brothered against Dustin Poirier. But this time, it seemed like the weight he put on a little bit better. He filled out much more. And man, what he did against Justin Gaethje was not what I expected. I expected Justin to be able to do a lot more. Now, don't get me wrong, really damaging low kicks throughout the fight for Justin Gaethje, but we've seen guys like Alexander Volkanovski do that to him. But, Max Holloway has a leg that's made of steel. He does not show damage off that front leg somehow, some way, even as many times as he gets kicked off that lead leg, and as, heavy as a boxer using that as he is, he's able to withstand and keep pushing forward. At the end of the first round, after, Max Holloway did his thing, spinning back kick as Justin Gaethje is kind of, crouching into his guard, catches the nose, breaks the nose, and that really changes the whole dynamic of the fight, right? Because Justin Gaethje cannot breathe out of his nose at this point. And then from here, Max Holloway just starts putting on a masterclass, right? Did a really good job of kicking the legs with like that stomp on the top of the leg, attacking the body throughout the fight, which I think really set up the finish at the end. Because if you think about it, the body work throughout all 4 of the first rounds and throughout 4 minutes and 50 seconds of the 4th round. What did he finish the combination that ended the fight? It was body, body, head that finished for Max Holloway. And the body work throughout the entire fight was an absolute investment for him delivering one of the best finishes, if not the best finish in UFC history, with the buzzer beater knockout for the BMF title. I think in this stakes, probably the best buzzer beater knockout, but definitely one of the best knockouts, if not the best knockout in UFC history when it comes to just the way it was done, right? In that kind of manner. So, Johan, I'll let you stick it off with this one, my man. What was your initial reaction? I mean, you actually sent me a picture of your initial reaction of what that was, but you saw Ilia Topuria in the crowd not looking so excited for that potential matchup. So first off, obviously, reaction to the fight, Max looking better at 155 this time around. And then overall, what did you think of Ilya's reaction? Do you think that was him, potentially not wanting that matchup, or just what were your thoughts on that overall?
Yeah, I actually have Ilya's reaction right here. It's actually right here. This is Ilia Toporia's reaction right here. He actually sent me this earlier after the fight. I have his number if you want it. But yeah, I would feel the same way that Ilya did. I mean, he did not look like he wanted to fight Max after that performance. I mean, and who blames him? Who would blame him? He made one of the most dangerous fighters in the UFC look like nothing to him. Fearless. Knocked him out clean. And not only that, but he put on an overall performance. It wasn't like he just knocked him out clean with like a one punch early in the fight. It's like he outboxed him. He outsmarted him through 5 rounds. A whole 5 rounds. One, he broke his nose with a spinning back kick, which phenomenal technique. But 2, he also just if you look at it, he made Gaethje scared. He was giving him constant looks the entire time. When if you look at it, Max was always feinting, kind of giving him looks, and Justin Gaethje was biting on all of it. And it's mainly because he broke his nose. I mean, the more damage you take to the nose, I mean, the less punishment you can take, obviously. Rory McDonald knows that very well. But it was very evident that he was anticipating a lot of shots, and that's why Max was able to, tag him so easily, especially with when he got close. It's because he was just constantly feinting and stuff and kind of just showing him stuff. And that's the brilliance of his boxing. You know what I mean? He's one of the guys that I truly believe that if he wanted to make a transition into boxing, it would be seamless because it's just so crisp. It's such a high volume and it has such, fast twitching technique that it's almost like, man, are you not a pro boxer? For real. And then not only that, but those teep kicks, those front kicks, giving him different looks. Because, obviously, those leg kicks from Justin Gaethje are dangerous, lethal. I don't want to take one. But, Max is so tough, taking that damage. But not only that, but he was also, exchanging his teep kick so that way it could, he could kind of gauge, separate some more distance. So that way he's not taking the brunt of those kicks to his lead leg. Again, an overall stellar performance, a badass performance from Max Holloway. I don't know if Ilya wants him, even in Spain. Even if Ilya had it in his home country, I don't think he wants that right now. He definitely looked like he shit his pants when they put the camera on him. So I don't know, but that has to be the fight to make. You know what I mean? That is the fight to make at 145. No one can tell me different. That is the one. Ilya versus Max Holloway.
Blake, I mean, like Johan said, obviously that's what it should be next. I don't think there is really anybody else outside of that, because if you think about it, really, Johan, you made a really good point. Justin Gaethje and Ilia Topuria are similar in ways, right? Justin Gaethje comes from a really strong wrestling background, although he doesn't use it. If the 155-pound division didn't have someone like Islam Makhachev, Justin Gaethje very well could have been or would be the undisputed champion at this division at some point in his career. 145 doesn't have that guy, right? They don't have that Islam Makhachev. They don't have that guy at 135, that Merab Dvalishvili, right? that's the division that really has that gap. So someone with power like Ilya Topuria can go in there and win that belt like he did, right? So for Max Holloway to go up a weight class and beat Justin Gaethje, who is almost the Charmeleon or the Charizard to the Charmeleon that Ilya Topuria is, right? Justin Gaethje is that final boss level of what that Ilya Topuria would be when it comes to, the next weight class up. So for, that to happen, that would be that would definitely be scary for Ilya Topuria. So Blake, thoughts on the fight, just reaction overall to that insane knockout on the last 10 seconds. And how do you think, Johan said it should happen, so I'll let you expand on it. How do you think a Max Holloway versus Ilya Topuria fight looks, even in Spain?
Well, one, I don't know how I can follow up Johan's breakdown because that was absolutely immaculate.
Pause real
Especially
quick.
the fact
Give me 1
that
second, buddy. We have Connor versus
Oh
Chandler
my
that
gosh.
is happening.
it is officially happening.
It looks like it's happening. We've got the
Not
comments.
not
I
not
trust the comments.
speculation. This is actually fucking
June
happening.
29th. June
And
29th.
Sean, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to look good. Have you seen Dave, L, and Maddie? They're phenomenal. I mean, I don't mind being the B crew to those guys. They're great. But
I appreciate it,
Sean's always
Sean.
bringing
Thank
in
you.
some good heat off the comments. Chandler about to knock him out. I think so too. So Blake, I'll let you finish elaborating on your Holloway versus Ilya point, and then I'll let you give a quick chime in, as we all will, on the new initial news coming in about Chandler versus McGregor.
Well, one, I just want to appreciate Sean for throwing shade because you know what, if we're average compared to the best, I'll take it. You know what I mean? But no, I'll tell you what. Like I said, Johan said it best. When they put the camera on Ilya Topuria, he looked like he 100% shitted his pants. He did not want to be the guy that they were highlighting after the performance that Max Blessed Holloway just put on. It was phenomenal. And I think I was one of the outsiders that actually bet on Max going into that fight. I did bet on Max because here's the thing. Yes, Justin Gaethje has a great wrestling background from Northern Colorado. He was an NCAA wrestler with a great record. Guess what Justin Gaethje never does and never has done in the UFC? He doesn't wrestle. Why? I have no idea. Why does he not translate his skills into the skill competition that loves wrestling? I will never understand. His body physically rejects it. Now, what Justin Gaethje does best is there's a reason they call him the highlight. He knocks people out, and he is amazing at the leg kicks. His leg kicks are vicious, which is why, again, what Johan said and what you said, why he was so good at how Max was so good at checking the kicks, and if not even checking, because he didn't check that many, taking the kicks that Justin Gaethje fed him. Okay, his leg was ate up at the end of the day, and I guarantee you Max Holloway is going to be limping all day tomorrow. But he is a tough motherfucker, and guess what? They were fighting for the toughest, baddest motherfucking belt in the entire world. That's what they were doing. Max Holloway went in and put on a masterclass of striking, not only with the boxing, because we know Max Holloway is one of look at him. He does not look like he wants to be on camera. That man just pooped himself. That man just shatted in his own britches. Anyway, Max Holloway went in there and put on a masterclass of boxing. Not only did he put on a masterclass of boxing, but he put on a masterclass of striking. He was able to get into Justin Gaethje's mind, land strikes left and right. And at the end of the first, I believe it was the end of the first round, that he threw that spinning back kick, which, it's not out of Holloway's repertoire, but to throw that spinning back kick, and he did it 2 or 3 times throughout the fight. He did it as soon as he knew that he would throw a feint, Gaethje would duck, and he would hit him with it. He threw the feint, Gaethje ducked, and he hit him in the nose and broke Gaethje's nose in the first round with that spinning back kick. And then that's when Ilya Topuria shit his pants. All I'm saying is Max Holloway went out there and put on a performance that would shock the world, but I don't think it shocked me. I don't think it shocked fight fans because he is an exponentially best boxer. That didn't even make sense. He is a great boxer, one of the best. Him and Nate Diaz, I would love to see a boxing match against. But
Nate
he
Diaz
went
coming
out
up
there.
against Jorge Masvidal in a boxing match coming up soon.
I know. Hey, shout out. But no, I thought this fight was fight of the night, and the way he ended it. Are you kidding me? The way he ended it, he did what he's done multiple times. Stood in the middle of the octagon, called out his opponent, put his finger into the air, and said, "Come fight me, motherfucker." And Gaethje, who I respect the shit out of, came in and said, "All right, let's fucking box then. If you want to throw hands, let's throw hands," right in the center of the octagon. And Max Holloway, with 2 seconds left, 2 seconds, slept Gaethje. I think that was an incredible performance. I have that as my performance of the night, winner of that 300K. I mean, that's going to change Max's life.
Honestly, it shouldn't though because he was champ for so long. But we'll get to another
Well,
topic
you
for
know what I
another day.
mean.
That's another
You know what I
topic for
mean. You know
another
what I
day.
mean. John,
But
hey, John's being an ass tonight. You know what I mean?
no, I mean we're on fight number 4 and we're 36 minutes and
Jesus.
we
All right, my
still
bad.
no, not at all. Not even that. It's just holy
There's a lot
shit,
of
this fight
fights.
card was so good.
I
Like,
knew this could be a 2-hour post-fight show just because.
Oh shit.
literally. But let's get into the 4th fight because this was just as crazy. Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira. Arman surviving one of the most lethal, actually the most lethal submission artist in UFC history, had him deep in a guillotine in the first round where Arman was able to get out of it, use the wrestling to get out of it and get control in that second round. Third round, where it gets a little bit interesting. Arman had the control in the last 20 seconds. Charles Oliveira slipped in that choke. It seemed like it was going to be, I thought he was going to go out. It seemed like he had the angle on it, but Arman Tsarukyan was able to survive. Blake, I'll kick this one right back to you, buddy. Thoughts on Arman getting the win because it was a split decision. I thought it should have been, I thought it was pretty clear that Arman won, if we're being honest. So thoughts on it being a split decision and early preview, Arman Tsarukyan versus Islam Makhachev, 155-pound belt, baby.
Yeah, no, I thought Arman definitely had a point in this post-fight interview where he's like, I don't know what that judge gave gave Oliveira the extra round. Why was it a split decision? But I am the winner and I will talk now. I thought that was hilarious, by the way. He didn't mean it comically, but I thought it was funny.
The stoicness just in the Lost in Translation is funny.
Exactly.
Johan has one
exactly.
Yo. Sorry to
So
pause.
I thought, oh, what?
Speaking of Islam and Poirier is official for 302.
Oh. Okay.
Yes.
Johan breaking live news here on Fight Bananas.
So Connor
Yeah.
versus Chandler, Islam
Real-
versus Poirier.
Yes.
2 fights announced tonight. Dana says he never announces fights that night of, but he always does that shit. That lying motherfucker.
Wait, and
He's
on
a
that
lying
on that
motherfucker.
same card is Costa and Strickland.
Oof. That's gonna be a
We're getting off track, but I had to say that because we're talking about
No,
Islam
that's
and
a great
Saru.
call out. So Islam versus Poirier, winner, I guess, of that faces Arman because Arman is undoubtedly the number 1 contender. Blake, continue, my man.
Shit. Anyway, what I was saying was I thought Arman's performance was fantastic. I thought he did it and came in exactly what he should have done. I don't think I agree with the split decision, but and he obviously had his gripes about it as well. I thought Charles Oliveira did a great job fighting to the end and continuously looking. I mean, I thought he had that submission cinched up first or second round, and Arman was able to get out of it. So it was, I mean, he did a really good job. I don't agree with the decision necessarily. I see how it can be split, maybe in the infinitesimal space, but no, Arman did what he was exactly what he was supposed to do.
For sure. And oh, go ahead, continue.
Oh,
I was just gonna say, give that quick preview. let's say it is Islam, or I'll let Johan do a preview against Dustin Poirier. So Blake, Islam retains. Arman versus Islam. How do you feel that one goes?
Arman versus Islam, man, I'll tell you what. I just Islam has not come up against somebody yet that I feel that is somebody that can beat him. Arman is going to be his best opponent up until this point, I believe, but we'll see. I mean, dude, Islam is just a different beast altogether. And what he does and what he does well and staying out of dangerous positions is what Islam does best. So I it sucks because I think Islam takes it, but I want when somebody's on top, you always want to see him toppled if there's if there's an adequate opponent. And I think Arman is an adequate opponent. But I don't know if Islam's just so slick, man. Like he knows the counter. He's playing 4D chess out here.
Playing quantum chess at this point, but I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
for Arman, this being that would be a rematch for him, right? And I was so impressed in Arman taking this fight against Islam on short notice when they first fought. And Arman just naturally has really good wrestling. I mean, you saw it tonight against Charles Oliveira in the first round. Was it Mount that he was able to escape out of and
Yes.
be able to, you're right, and get the reversal? Like, Charles Oliveira is the best submission artist in UFC history. Now, granted, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling and top control, that's two different sides of the coin, right?
Yeah.
But for Arman to be able to do that was super impressive, in my opinion. For him to survive that choke, also very impressive. I think that tonight is going to be two positives for Arman. One, he's the number one contender, but two, I think he had two growing lessons in the positions that he caught in that were dangerous, right? He's going to be able to take those and be like, hey, I can grow from this. So Arman Sarukian against potentially, which if this happens, I would be one of the happiest dudes alive. If Dustin Poirier gets undisputed gold, I would love to see that happen. But Dustin Poirier, let's say he gets it done versus Arman Sarukian. Johan, how do you see that one going down?
All right. So if it was Arman and Dustin, it'd be an interesting matchup because we know that when it comes to cage pressure and it comes to grappling, Dustin seems to falter when it comes to the upper echelon of wrestlers. I mean, even Benoit Saint-Denis, who he ended up stopping, was getting the upper hand in the grappling department. Now, that being said, I think what's going to be a little bit more dangerous is that Arman, as of late, has become a more creative striker. Now, if you've seen in this fight, I mean, he was throwing spinning kicks. He threw an inward axe kick on Charles Oliveira. First off,
By the way, did you see the angle that they
Oh my God.
pressed pause on? That thing was straight up.
Now, listen, I come from Taekwondo. Throwing an axe kick in general in the inside is hard. Throwing it from the outside straight down is 10 times harder. So the fact that he's able to do that and connect cleanly is something of a beauty. But think about this. It's just, if it was Arman and Dustin, I think really what would it pertain to is how well can Dustin handle the pressure of Arman? Can he get his back off the cage? And can Arman get his head off the center line? Because everything we're going to know about Dustin is that he's going to counterpunch for days. He is the best counterpuncher in the lightweight division, probably in the UFC. He just has a knack for it, and especially when it comes to chaos. See, look at that. Look at his quad right there.
God damn.
That thing has a mind of its own. That's how freaking powerful he is. But that's the thing. I think that's the other wrinkle you have to think about Arman is that, yes, he is a physically strong lightweight. He is a great grappler, but he's also getting better at striking. And he's also getting more creative. So if you're not, prepared for that, it's going to be a tough night. But listen, we have to get through Islam versus Dustin first. As much as I want to talk about Arman and Dustin, I can't really talk about that because I have to see the matchup that's at hand first. And that is Dustin facing someone who fights a lot like Khabib, who he's already fought. So, again, This is Dustin Poirier's last shot at a world title. This is his last shot in lightweight. If he wants to go up to welterweight, be my guest. But this is his last shot at lightweight. So June 1st, that's when that fight is. It's going to be an interesting one. And, we'll after that fight, we'll talk all about Arman. I guarantee you this. Arman gets the shot in Abu Dhabi. That is where his fight, that is where his title fight's going to
That's a
be,
good
in Abu
call.
Dhabi.
That's a good
So,
call.
so whatever happens next, I'm just my mind's blown because I have all these fight announcements, and we're talking about Arman's freaking
It's
performance.
crazy. And
You
then
know what I
still we
mean?
have to get to the rest of
Everything
this
else.
card. So man, it's crazy. Honestly, to be honest with you guys, Bo Nickel deserves some love, but his performance doesn't have much um to it, right? Don't get me wrong, like it was great, but with him getting a win, it's not like he's getting a title fight. So we're gonna put him on the back burner for now. We're gonna go to Yuri Prohaska versus Alexander Rakic. And Johan, this is a fight that I know you were looking forward to all day. I'll let you break it down, kind of what it broke down like, and then also just thoughts on Yuri's performance. And since he probably doesn't get a title fight next, who do you think is next for him?
Yeah. So this was everything that was hyped up to be, I think, at least in my own head. I thought these were, honestly, I think besides Pereira, these are the two best at 205. Rakic, was starting early. I mean, he was hitting the leg of Yuri. He was tagging him with the jab. He was really reading Yuri because Yuri had his hands down, and he likes to come forward, and sometimes he comes recklessly forward. And Rakic was just tagging him, and he was tagging him pretty well. But you saw towards the end of the first round, Yuri started to get his groove, and he started to become more aggressive. And then in the second, you kind of saw like once they started, getting into those, 50-50 exchanges, Yuri was catching them with like short shots. And those short shots is what led to Rakic's downfall. And overall, like this performance, man, this performance from Yuri, he showed that like he can come back from, especially after, getting beat by Pereira, coming back, when you were down on the card to stop a guy like Alexander Rakic is something crazy. And in all honesty, he honestly does deserve the number one contender shot, but because of the champion in that division who he just lost to, he's in a sticky situation. So obviously, I think the next best thing, I've already said before, Magomed Ankalaev, make it a title eliminator so that way you have a clear cut title contender, number one contender at 205, because yes, this performance deserves performance of the night. I think maybe even fight of the night, but because that loss is so recent in our minds, it's kind of hard to just clear cut say yes, he deserves that title shot.
Absolutely. Blake, thoughts on Yuri Prohaska just being a fucking samurai? Because he ate so many punches in this fight
Yeah.
that he literally, it just did not even phase him. He was just determined, like almost bloodthirsty on knocking out Alexander Rakic. Thoughts on this fight and just the performance overall and anything else you have to add to it?
I'm not gonna lie, guys. I thought Rokic was going to win there for quite a minute. He was looking very clean. His strikes were landing very clean, and then all of a sudden, Jiri, being the samurai that he is, honed in on the inner zen and was able to pull out a win. Again, that I didn't even mean that for that to rhyme, but was able to pull out a win. And honestly, after it happened, it settled in with me that Jiri Prohaska, it didn't surprise me because Jiri does this. Like, that's what he does. Like, he's had big fights before, he's had problems before, but he's always seemed to normally come out of them. And Alexander Rakic looked amazing. Like, he looked really good. But Jiri Prohaska is who we thought he was. What's that? The old Chicago Bears coach. They are who we thought they were. They are who we thought they were. Like that's exactly what Alexander was saying to Jiri. Like they are who we thought they were. Like Jiri came in and was able to get the finish. So I'd be surprised if it's not Jiri. If they do a title eliminator, I'd understand it, but no, I think you kind of got to give Jiri that rematch
Mm.
and see what's up.
Hey, I mean, just straight out of excitement, that's definitely a matchup that I would like to see. Alex
Exactly.
Pereira just looks so good at the division. It's hard for me to think or see someone that fights with his hands down. Like, yeah, you can eat a punch or two from Alexander Rakic. You can't eat a punch or two like that from Alex Pereira,
No,
which makes it really
not at
tough
all.
so I do think that he'll have to make some adjustments in that fight. So, Blake, I'll throw it right back up to you. I'll let you pick your choice of whichever the fights. We have Kayla Harrison, who potentially is pronouncing herself as the number one contender in that division for the 135-pound division. There's also, a load of other fights: Cody Garbrandt, Davison Figueiredo. Also, Alex Jermaine Sterling stepping up to 145. Break down whichever one was your favorite, and then your reaction to that fight overall.
Ooh, say the what were the fights again that I'm picking from?
Davison
Because
Figueiredo,
goddamn.
Holly Holm, or Kayla Harrison, Holly Holm, and then Aljamain Sterling,
Ooh.
or whichever other was your favorite.
As far as favorites go, I mean, I oh, dude, that's tough because I thought Aljamain came out and did exactly. Again, I've said this. I'm exhausting the phrase at this point, but I thought Aljamain did what he was supposed to do. But it was a lot more tumultuous than I thought it was going to be. Aljamain had a little struggle. It went to a decision, but I thought Aljamain looked really good. As far as Kayla Harrison, I fully expected to win. I mean, she's fighting a 42-year-old Holly Holm. Now, don't get me wrong, Holly Holm, her technique is fantastic. She's never lost it. She's always looked great. I mean, hell, we're talking about the woman that took down the greatest women's fighter of all time in Ronda Rousey, and then made it. She already had a career, but then catapulted her career into the stratosphere by beating Ronda Rousey. I mean, beating one of the best women's fighters that everybody thought. Now, when you have Kayla Harrison, it's even funnier because Kayla Harrison has a better background than
Ronda.
Ronda does. Yes, thank you. Sorry. She has a better background than Ronda does, and she's a judo champion. She was obviously a PFL champion.
Gold
She comes
medalist.
in, huh?
I believe she's a gold medalist too.
Yeah.
No, she's a two-time. I believe she was two-time gold medalist. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
Two.
no, you're right. Correct.
Two-time gold medalist. And so the fact that she came in and did the fact that she dropped down to 135
Mm.
after competing at 155 and even heavier after that, like the fact that she was able to drop weight, do it as a professional, came into the UFC, and I mean, dude, she looks like a bodybuilder. She is exemplary as as a physique, and that is incredible. So Kayla Harrison came in and did what I thought she would do, but to do it against Holly Holm, I mean, does that not catapult you into the realm of championship-esque contenders already? Am I wrong?
No, I 100% agree with you. I think Kayla Harrison, for all the smoke and all the heat she'd gotten for not being able to have the matchup with Amanda Nunez, which one wasn't her fault. She was in
Oh,
PFL. Nunez
Amanda
was
Nunez was calling her ass out the entire time.
right. And then also Cyborg was another potential matchup that didn't happen because Kayla Harrison decided to come to the UFC, which if you look, what does they say? Retrospective is 2020 or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
But
Hindsight.
hindsight is 2020. Thank you, Blake. It's almost 3 a.m. here, buddy. But but if Kayla Harrison fought Chris Cyborg and that fight goes maybe sideways or not as good as it tonight, she's not in the position that is. Now, she bet on herself. She came to the UFC. She fought Holly Holm, who is one of the most decorated, not just UFC fighters, but female combat sports
Combat sports.
athletes
Yep.
of all time. And she comes in and absolutely dominates her. Like you said, Blake, of course, she's 44, but this is a Holly Holm that's still at the top of the division, taking out every other contender that's coming her way. Sure, she's the gatekeeper because she's not going to be the champ of the division anymore, but for Kayla Harrison to come in and do what she did, dominate elbows, not just control, right? She was able to use elbows for the first time, I believe, because she was limited to not
Yeah,
using those in the PFL before. So, now she comes in, she asserts her dominance. You're going to see, I think what is the fight set up to be? It's going to be, is it Raquel Pennington versus um, Juliana Pena? Who's set up for
that
135?
I think
that's what they were talking about.
I think that's
Okay,
it.
so then you have that fight, and Kayla Harrison is right there at the number one contender spot. And honestly, I don't care which one of those two females that she fights. I think she mauls them. I know Juliana Pena is a great submission artist. And don't get me wrong, Rocky's a good fighter too. But I think Kayla Harrison's top pressure, her fighting at ATT and training with those killers out there, makes her almost a shoo-in for this division to be a champion. Johan, final thoughts on this fight before we move on to another.
Yeah, and I think the thing is like with this performance, she instantly put herself at, I would say, at the top of the rankings, and that's something that's unprecedented. And I think it's a mixture between her talent and how thin that division is. Ever since Amanda Nunes you know, has retired, there has been a steep drop off at women's bantamweight. And I think the reason that is because Kayla Harrison represents something that's missing in that division, and that's the fact that she's at world level in her background. There's not really a fighter that's world level in their martial art. You know what I mean? Rocky is a tough fighter, but she's a kind of an overall generalist. You know what I mean? She's a tough, gritty fighter, but she doesn't specialize in anything. Uh, Juliana Pena, great grappler, but she's not like a NCAA Division I wrestling champion or something like that, or Olympian. Kayla Harrison is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. You know what I mean? Physically strong. And the fact that she can make 135 now, which I didn't think she could do, because 155, she looked like the Hulk. Now she's looking like freaking Ronnie Coleman. I don't know who can stop her, because if she's able to hydrate back up to 160 or even higher, there's no stopping her. She's going to be too big for these women. So overall, I think Kayla Harrison did what she had to do.
Yeah, and we have a friend joining us, a furry friend. Who we got there, Blake?
This is Kaiser.
You got
Kaiser,
Kaiser.
He wanted to say hi. He's a big Holly Holm fan, so he was a little not too happy when she lost. But
Well, he looks like he's a very nice guy there, But Johan, obviously, I'll throw it back to you. Blake went with Kayla Harrison's dominating performance. So, Johan, do you want to go with Sterling? And because I'll ask you with that kind of, do you think that? Because I think he looked great out there. I think the wrestling was very dominant. Obviously, you still want to see a little bit more out of the striking for Aljamain Sterling, but he did crack a couple of shots on Calvin Kattar there as well. So you have that, or you also have Cody Garbrandt as well. But yeah, if you do go with that one, do you think he has a run to the title at some point at 145, Aljamain Sterling?
Yeah, so say what you say. The fans can say whatever they want about Aljamain Sterling. He did what he was supposed to do. I think that he established himself that he is going to be in the top 5 of featherweight. He faced a really gamed guy, a real good test at 145 in his debut in the new weight division in Calvin Kattar. And he did what he was supposed to do. I mean, he implemented his game plan, and that was the biggest thing. He had to get adjusted to see if he could take these guys down at 145. That was the big thing. If he was not able to do that, then he was kind of screwed. You know what I mean? Because at 135, he was a big bantamweight. So it was easier to kind of maul them and kind of, to kind of get a little more explosive. But these guys, they're very similar size to him. Even though he filled into his frame, they're all in the same structure. So I'm not, again, and when I'm watching Aljamain Sterling, I'm not looking for his striking. His striking sets up his wrestling. And his striking is not like the most dangerous thing. It's more just high volume. And that's what I saw. I saw a standard Aljamain Sterling performance, throwing high volume, throwing a high amount of volume of kicks, setting those kicks up with takedowns. I saw everything that I needed to see, and I saw that he can implement that successfully. So overall, I was impressed by Aljamain Sterling. I think that he could be a serious contender at 145, whether he's in the top 5 or he's just outside of it. I think he's in a good spot. And I honestly, a interesting matchup for me that I would like to see is him against Arnold Allen. You know what I mean? Two grapplers. I think that'd be a great matchup. But honestly, like there's a lot of, you know, it just got more open. 145 is more open now with Aljamain Sterling, and then obviously Max Holloway. Like this is an exciting division. So no, I think he did what he was supposed to do.
Absolutely. And, Arnold Allen's a good one. Blake, I'll let you finish thoughts off on that fight as well. I do believe, respectfully, and I say that because that's what Aljamain Sterling said. He respectfully called out Brian Ortega, I believe was the matchup he called out for that one. So, Blake, I'll confirm on that. So, real quick, just thoughts on what's his name? Sterling coming in at 145 and making it, and then thoughts on him versus Ortega? Because, yeah, he said that he says he wants to fight Ortega. So thoughts on that fight? Do you think how do you think that fight plays out?
Well, it's funny that you say that because I'm looking at the rankings right now, and of all the guys, the first guy that came to mind to me is if he's going to fight in the featherweight division. The first one that came to mind was Josh Emmett. I would love to see that fight because of the differences in skill set. But Arnold Allen was my next guy, and Johan said it. The other guy that I was looking at was Brian Ortega. So it's funny that these all align with each other because I think him versus Brian Ortega would be freaking phenomenal. Who wins that fight? I don't know. I would like to put my money on Brian Ortega just because maybe it's the fan in me, but he is just so concise on what he does. But if you want to bring it back down, I think the fight versus him and Josh Emmett becomes a very interesting fight. Okay? Josh Emmett has a lot of power. Sterling has a lot of skill. And I think skill versus power is always a very interesting matchup. Now, if you take that to the next guy, Arnold Allen, I think that is a great fight. I think that's actually the most specific and perfect fight that you give him at that featherweight position. So it's interesting. I mean, Johan kind of hit it on the head there. So either of those or all three of those look good. Brian Ortega is obviously bumping him up the ranks real quick because he's fighting a number 3 guy, and if he obviously gets a win over a number 3 guy in the featherweight division, he then has an automatic shot at the championship. But I love either Josh Emmett or Arnold Allen to start with, just to see what he can do.
Absolutely. I think that'd be a good one. Blake, 2 more fights that we'll cover tonight before we close it out here tonight. I think the 2 that we probably should talk about, Bobby Green, Jim Miller, Figueiredo versus Cody. I'll let you take your pick. Johan, you'll take the other one, and then we'll close this boy out here tonight.
So I'm going to go ahead and go with Bobby Green versus Jim Miller, mainly because I think Jim Miller was the fan favorite. I actually put money on Jim Miller. He has said he fought in UFC 100. He wanted to fight in UFC 300. I think he became a fan favorite because everybody wanted to. Well, one, he's already a fan favorite. I mean, it's Jim fucking Miller. Exactly. So I think he was already a fan favorite. But the fact that you put him up against another fan favorite and the fact of Bobby Green, like, that was just a recipe that was going to explode. And the fact that Jim looked really good in the first round, I thought Jim looked really good. Second, third round, not so much. So the fact that he lost, I think, gave fans a lot of upset because, well, it depends on who you are because, again, 2 of them are fan favorites. So I thought it was a great person as Dana White. This matchup as itself was phenomenal. I think this was a great matchup for the viewer's perspective and as a marketing perspective. And it's sad because Jim Miller didn't get the win. Obviously, he got real cut up here at the end of the fight. But the fact that you had Jim Miller losing to Bobby Green via decision, and Jim Miller looked like he was in a fight that Jim Miller would have lost, or Jim Miller looked like he was in a fight that Jim Miller just fought, that couldn't have been better. So I think as far as a marketing perspective goes, that was a fantastic setup. And Bobby Green in the second and third round, I mean, that jab was landing so clean. It was landing so clean. And Jim couldn't do anything about it. And that's not his fault. You know, I'm curious to see if Jim continues, if Jim retires, you know, what have you. But as that fight went, I was rooting for Jim, but I knew that this was going to be a fight for the ages just on the legendary factory. You know what I mean? Like Jim Miller, Bobby Green, two guys, fan favorites, UFC 300. Like the whole thing just had the perfect build-up. You know what I mean?
The storylines were great. This was one of those fights where it's like, okay, you didn't have two of the most skilled fighters, right? These aren't the highest ranked guys, but you know, they're not two up and comers either, but these were just two OGs of the sport fucking throwing down there. Like that's something
It's like it's like if you put Darren Elkins versus Clay Guida. Like you're like, dude, none of them are great, but like we want to see it.
Right. Exactly. You know, it's just a car crash waiting to happen that you want
exactly.
to see. Johan, I'll let you finish out here tonight. Davison Figueiredo getting the win against Cody Garbrandt. I thought he was going to knock him out. Gets it done by rear naked choke. Thoughts on the fight, and give me a quick breakdown on it.
Well, listen, you know, I thought so too, but you know, Davison Figueiredo reminded us how great of a grappler he is. You know, I think we keep forgetting that he is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I believe, and I think like that's just an aspect of his game that we just don't see a lot because he is such a headhunter. He's such a powerful hitter. But man, like, and you know what's crazy about his jiu-jitsu? It's not like pretty like Oliveira's and stuff. It looks rough and it looks like he's just manhandling somebody. When he had that choke, when he had that rear naked choke, it looked like he was ripping Cody Garbrandt's head off. It
reminded me of what he did to Joseph Benavidez.
He killed that man. I saw that man's face. He was dead. I saw it. It was not, he was like, that man was dead. But like I said, like he looks like he just manhandles. And that's the thing, is just the fact that at 135, he can still have that strength, you know, not just the power, but the strength to be able to grapple and put the people in the position that he needs to get the chokes in. It's kind of crazy. And, you know, I think that the performance was impressive, but he faced Cody Garbrandt, a past his prime Cody Garbrandt. I want to see this against, you know, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I want to see if he is a serious contender at bantamweight. That's why he moved up. I mean, he is a former world champion. He moved up because he wants to be a champion at another weight division. So it's interesting. I think it was a great way to start the card. I think Figueiredo impressed immensely, but I want to see that against the upper echelon of the division. That's all. That's my biggest takeaway.
Absolutely. I think this was more so, you know, the reason this was the first fight of the card. You had two former champs going at former 125, former 135. Yep. And yeah, absolutely right. Just squeeze the life out of this man. Shout out to Figueiredo, the sushi chef, hairdresser, and professional strangle artist for Davison Figueiredo. So beautiful there on that one. But guys, we had some excellent other fights on this card as well. Moicano making an excellent comeback. Actually, fuck it. Let's just cover it anyways. Blake, give me a quick breakdown on that one.
On Moicano?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry.
Because, yeah, he got dropped in the first. Jalen Turner walked away like he thought the fight was done.
That was my problem. That was my biggest problem with the entire fight, was that if Jalen Turner would have hopped on Moicano and after he pulled a Sugar Sean is what he did. But the problem is Moicano wasn't out. And the fact that he turned around and walked off and then tried to come back and be like, oh, he even tried to argue with the ref. And I forget who the ref was at the time, but why would you do that? Why put on the show when you could put on the finish? And I think he could have finished Moicano right there, but he chose not to. He tried to showboat a little bit, and I get it. $300,000 on the line for the bonus check is there. I get it. But like that is not the place and or time to try to do that. And I thought he could have finished him there, and he didn't. And guess what? It came back to bite him in the ass.
No performance bonus and no win bonus. So now you're out of fucking
Exactly.
everything. So, but yeah, shout out to Moicano, man, because even after getting dropped in the first round, you saw that a couple times tonight. You saw people getting dropped and still coming back and getting. I mean, you saw Max Holloway getting dropped by Justin Gaethje. Apparently, that was the first time he's ever been dropped. So that's
was this card, by the way. I'm sorry to interrupt you, John, but was this card, by the way, the most drops ever in a card?
That's a good one. Let's see. We had
That's a great question because so many people got dropped, winners and or losers.
We had 8 drops. We had 8 drops throughout the card.
8 drops. That has to be up there with some of the best.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. I mean,
there's UFC 189 had a lot of drops too.
So that's a good stat to see if we can figure that out down the line. I know we've had cards or fight cards with like 8 or 9 finishes, but I'm not sure if we've had 8 or 9 knockouts or drops. But yeah, that was a great fight. Johan, break down to me Diego Lopez absolutely mauling Sadiq Youssef real quick.
It was just a mauling. You know what I mean? I think, again, if you weren't a world champion on this fight card, you were an up-and-coming prospect that the UFC is trying to push. And that is what Diego Lopez was. He fought a dangerous guy in Sadiq Youssef, and pretty much manhandled him. Man, he's so aggressive, so tight. I've never the ability to throw tight, short punches with that much power is something genetically. You have the genetics for it. You can't train for it. You have the fast twitching muscles or you don't. But how aggressive he was, the killer instinct that he had, the finishing ability, it was just amazing. I'm excited to see what he does at featherweight. I mean, that man is going to be a problem.
I'm pretty sure they call those genetics the lopes.
The lopes. It might just be because that hair combined with those short punches. I don't know what it is. And guys, normally we would play guess the bonus. Unfortunately,
was it Jamal Hill?
There was only 2 bonuses tonight.
Really?
Yeah. So fight of the night and the performance of the night actually both went to the same fight, which I'm pretty sure you guys can guess.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't know.
Johan?
I would imagine Max Holloway versus Gaethje.
Was it Ilya Topuria?
That fight got $600,000 in bonuses because
wow,
they got fight of the night and performance of the night. But there was another performance of the night, which is another one. Johan, take your guess at it. Blake, I'll let you take a crack.
It was Jiri, wasn't it?
Blake,
I'm gonna guess. All right, just to be the devil's advocate.
No, just give me your fucking guess. I want to know what you thought.
You said Jiri?
Yes.
God damn. I think I'm gonna go. Fuck.
Let me get a Krabby Patty.
I guess. This is the outside performance, right? So correct. Obviously we had Holloway and God damn.
There's one more performance of the night. Any other finish on the card? Take your pick.
I gotta go with Johan. I gotta go Jiri.
There you go. That was the other one. So yeah, perfect. I was like, just bet with your fucking gut. But no, that was the other one as well.
The contrarian me wanted to go differently, but I couldn't find one.
Nah, it was good. I mean, you could have gone multiple ways. Like
that's what I'm saying.
Definitely given a performance award. I think Kayla Harrison earned one.
Yeah.
I think for what she did, she could have gotten one. I think that Moicano earned one after getting a comeback like what he did. Yes. Right? I think that's
the one that I was teetering on.
Yeah.
I definitely think that just because of the aura around 300, you wanted like one of those exciting finishes to be.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
What I mean? I think, but you expect. You think Dana White, when he said that he was going to give out $300,000 bonuses, he would give out more than one because with a card with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 finishes, there was only 2 fights that got bonuses.
There's always a catch.
There's always a catch. Dana's pockets. He don't want him to run deep, man. He don't want these fighters to get paid too much. Even
Well,
Max
Dana
Holloway.
doesn't have a lot of money, so
Hey,
I get it.
let's close it out, boys. We've covered this entire card. It was amazing, outside of a couple fights, but I mean, most of them that we covered were the ones. So, Blake, final thoughts, my man. Let's get out of here, buddy. What's your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. UFC 300 absolutely delivered from top to bottom. Like I said, when you have a lot of fighters that come in that are equally skilled, sometimes you get a ton of decisions on those cards. This one, you got some decisions, you got some submissions, you got a bunch of knockouts. I absolutely loved it from top to bottom. My favorite fight was absolutely Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje, but Weili Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan was phenomenal as the follow-up. I still have a little apprehensions about the Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill, but you know what? As a whole, the card, phenomenal. If you guys aren't subscribed to Fight Bananas, please subscribe because we give you all the best stuff from top to bottom.
Absolutely. Johan?
All right, man. Listen. Brock Lesnar, Frank Mir, Amanda Nunes, Misha Tate, Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill. Those are the 3 most significant main events in the UFC's history. Why? Because they all happened at their centennial. They all happened at 100, 200, and 300.
Wow.
This is now, granted, aside from all the Conor McGregor, but these, in terms of the companies, this is the most significant moment. This is the most important events because it represents a milestone in the company. The fact that they're able to grow the sport. You know what I mean? They're able to grow the sport to celebrate all these. We're able to get all these super cards because of these cards. You know what I mean? And I think, it lived up to the hype. It definitely lived. It was way better than UFC 200, but it definitely lived up to the hype. I mean, man, like I don't think I've been more excited for a UFC card than I was for UFC 300. And now with UFC 301 coming, I look at that card and I'm so sad. Like I am so sad because I'm like, man, I got so spoiled with this pay-per-view that I look at the main event and I'm like, man, that would have been the first fight on this card. But no, honestly though, this fight card was fantastic. I think every fight could have been fight of the night. We got crazy debuts, we got up and coming guys, we got former world champions. What else could we ask for, man? Like I said, my name's not Johan tonight. It's Leonidas. This is Sparta. UFC 300. We did it. We fucking did.
Hey, Leonidas and John, I want to ask you guys this real quick. Was this, because UFC 300 is a big deal, was this the greatest fight card ever compiled?
Mm.
In terms of star power or in terms of fights?
Right.
In terms of your opinion.
I'd have to go. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. If I'm just thinking of like, okay, the moment right now, yeah. But like there I'm sure there's a couple of other UFC cards that have had like a lot of wars on them as well.
Yeah.
You know, so
if we're talking about fight quality,
just cards.
If we're talking cards, this is the most important card.
Okay.
I think this is the most important card. It is the Tricentennial. This is 300 of their most significant events. I think this is the most important card, and they built it like the most important card. Nothing was too heavy. You know what I mean? And I think, people, and I remember like when the main event was announced, people were kind of like, they were kind of disappointed by it. But you have to think too, you're not just going for the main event. You're going for the entire card. It is a celebration of how far the sport has come. I definitely think this is the most important fight card in their company's history, probably until UFC 400, and I'm going to say the same exact fucking thing. But at this point, yes, this was their most important card. This is their most stacked card because, it had 12 former world champions.
Yeah.
So, like, yes. My short answer.
Johan, we'll have to come back to you in 2032 probably because that's when 400 will take place. But
Yeah, I think, I mean, with that, I mean, there was a couple other good ones. I mean, just looking at what Mahashev versus Volkanovski, that was an incredible fight card. They had
Great
some good
card.
fights on there too. Um, yeah, they have some other good cards, man. Just looking at some of the history that of what they got. So, I mean, just off the top of my head, though, right off just current moment, yeah, I would have to say yes. This card top to bottom, you had champions starting off the card, champions finishing the card, finishes top to bottom, split decisions throughout, so competitive fights. No, none of the fights um, were too boring as well. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that there was a little bit of lulls here and there. Don't get me wrong. Aljamain Sterling did what he had to do, but moments in grappling naturally that they're just fighting position. You're just waiting for something to happen. That's natural to happen when you're watching MMA. But I thought top to bottom, absolutely spectacular card. Uh, my favorite moment. I mean, I think everybody's gonna leave tonight remembering one of the most insane moments in MMA history, which we will probably see on repeat when UFC 400 comes around, when UFC 500 comes around, if UFC 1000 comes around, because that is, let's see, 7 times 8, because that would be 70 cards or 700 cards from now. You're looking at 56 years, so I'll
Yep.
probably be about 78 years old or so, or some shit
And
like
we're
that.
still going to be doing the Fight Bananas
And we're
post fight.
still gonna be doing Fight Bananas post-fight show. It's gonna be one really brown banana by that time, but
Oh,
we'll keep
brown
it
as
going,
fuck.
guys. But, hey, we've been going almost an hour and a half long. Blake, thank you as always for hopping on. Johan, thank you for as well jumping on, my buddy, and everybody who is in the comments. Too many people to name, but thank you guys as always. Thanks for everybody that hopped through during the live stream that was here earlier, a 7 hour plus live stream that Mr. Dave Van Auken did. And he obviously thanked the main man himself for giving us this platform. But as always, guys, we appreciate you guys. UFC 300 is in the books. Have a great night, and we'll see you guys after the next fight.